Hi, Miss Judy. I'm Siang, and I'm partnered with Elicia and Aiden. My group's heritage site is at Jubilee Walk, Esplanade Park. In this set of slides, we are going to cover the reasons for choosing our site, facts about Esplanade Park, the artifacts we have chosen, interviews we conducted, personal reflections, and the bibliography. There are three reasons for choosing for Esplanade Park as our heritage site. The first reason is to learn and recognize those who have fallen during the World Wars, laying a foundation for Singapore. The second reason is to better our understanding about the aftermath of the sacrifices and what they influenced. And last but not least, to know how Singaporeans struggled against the violence and subversions of the communist part of Malaya.
I'm Elicia, and I'll be sharing some facts and history about the Esplanade Park. The Esplanade Park was built to showcase many of Singapore's historical landmarks. It was built to commemorate late Singapore's war heroes' sacrifices during World War I and World War II. It is also one of the oldest heritage parks in Singapore. It was built in 1943 when Singapore was ruled by the Japanese during the Japanese occupation. It was then renovated in 1991 to enhance the civic district's identity. Now, I'll be sharing with you my chosen artifact. I chose the Lim Bo Seng Memorial as my artifact, as I wanted to know more about how Lim Bo Seng have contributed towards Singapore, as I've always heard of him during National Day on how he helped out during the Japanese occupation. He's also an important figure in Singapore, which made me curious and wanted to know more about him. This memorial is the only memorial that honors the sacrifice of an individual during the Second War. The backstory behind Lim Bo Seng was that he fled Singapore before the Japanese occupation officially took place, but he still continued to recruit and build a force against them in Malaya. However, he was betrayed by one of the spies and was tortured by the Japanese military police. Still, he continued to stay loyal and refused to betray his comrade's name. He then passed on due to the injuries. He became one of Singapore's important figures to commemorate because of his selfless acts to protect the people and his loyalty towards Singapore. After finding out more about the artifact, I feel more grateful, as back then Singapore wasn't as safe and many people died while sacrificing themselves to protect their loved ones. Some even left their family to go and fight for the country. Currently, we have a stronger security, which made me feel more safe about living in Singapore. As a citizen in Singapore, I'm proud of the war heroes who showed their determination in keeping the others safe, and I'm glad that their sacrifices were recognized by the country.
Hi, my name is Aiden and I'll be sharing with you my artifacts. So, um, for my chosen artifact, it is forging a nation marker. My reasons for choosing this artifact is that I was curious about the struggles of Singaporeans against the violence and subversions of the Communist Party of Malaya, as it is the reason as to what Singapore is as a nation of today. Two things that I had learned about the artifacts, which firstly, after World War II has ended, communism was on the rise in Asia. The second thing is that there was so much violence during the fight for independence from the British that it caused the colonial government to declare it as a state of emergency. So, knowing this information, it had read my perspective of Singapore and me personally as a Singaporean by being more thankful towards how Singapore had become what it is today and understanding the unity Singaporeans had showing had shown while rejecting communism despite it being on the rise during the struggles. Overall, it had impact on me and made me feel proud being a Singaporean.
The artifact I had chosen from Esplanade Park is a Singapore cenotaph, and these are some pictures that I had taken while visiting the Esplanade Park. My reason for choosing the cenotaph as my artifact is to bring more attention to Singapore cenotaph. This is because of my school experience that schools rarely thought about those who were defending Singapore during the World Wars and had not returned. Instead, talk about the main characters like Hitler and Joseph Stalin. The other reason is to learn more about the cenotaph, like the influence of the fallen soldiers. From this, I had learned that there are two dedications on the cenotaph, which the first dedication contained 124 local British soldiers from World War I, with their names listed, while the second dedication had soldiers from World War II but left unnamed. From researching and learning from many different sources, I can conclude that knowing that the current Singapore is only possible from the noble sacrifices of World War soldiers had made me feel more appreciative to how Singapore is now. And knowing that soldiers fought to protect what they had loved gave me a sense of solicitousness towards my family and friends. For my interview, I interviewed my mum, who is 47 years old. The first question that I had asked was, who do you think was or were the most important people during the world wars? And her reply was that family held the uttermost importance during wartime. She explained to me that family members were scattered all around Singapore, which had made it hard for families to stay close together. So, having the company of family members was like a privilege to people living in World War One and World War Two. My second question was about their thoughts on the Singapore cenotaph, which my mom replied with that because of the World War soldiers' sacrifices, we are able to have a stable and peaceful country to live in, which is growing fast with the assistance of advancing technology. Overall, she felt thankful to the fallen soldiers as many families had gotten the chance to thrive and continue their legacy, which had led to Singapore where it is now.
Now, I'll be sharing with you my interview. I interviewed a friend of mine, aged 17 years old, about his opinions about the war memorials. He shared with me that war memorials feels like a reminder to us that we should be grateful for what our ancestors did for us back in the past. And these war memorials is a symbol of gratitude and respect that everyone should be grateful and proud of. One of the great war heroes he knew was Elizabeth Choi. She was the most remarkable war hero in his opinion because of her bravery and willingness to serve the country with pride and honor. He couldn't be more grateful that someone like Elizabeth Choi existed, as her bravery and courage to stand up against the opposing country was what the country needed at the time. Though he may not have played a part in the war, he felt that she was a true game changer and we should all be grateful for her.
So this is my interview, and I interviewed my friend. So for my first question, I asked, what do you think about when Singapore faced communism from the Malaya Party? Which he responded with, it felt very unfair and inhumane to those living in Singapore as people just wanted to live their lifestyles, but in the end had to be dragged into another conflict. Singaporeans struggle a lot against the Malaya Party trying to protect their country. The second question I asked was, who do you think played a big role during this period? He then replied with Lee Kuan Yew. played a huge role in making rational and smart decisions against the communist threat in Singapore as the Prime Minister, which as a role had full authority and influence over Singapore. In summary, these were unfairness to people living in Singapore and that Lee Kuan Yew had a large influence over the outcome.
Personally, I feel that people shouldn't overlook the monuments created for the war heroes in Singapore, as they are also the people who have greatly contributed to the country, and their efforts ought to be recognized by the future generations. Before visiting the memorial park, I thought it was just learning more about Singapore's history and it might not impact me as much as it wouldn't concern me at all. But after finding out more, I realized that learning about Singapore's history made me feel like a deeper connection with my country. And I'm really proud of my country for finding its independence and is now one of the world's safest country. I feel that more people should educate themselves about Singapore's history, especially younger generations. It is important to know about how Singapore got through the tough time so they can be more appreciative of the country, and it's also a way to strengthen their national identity. The war heroes should get their efforts recognized after going through a tough time giving their all to protect the others, and we can also learn a thing or two after finding out more about them. This also teaches us that we should help each other when we face struggles, as the people nowadays avoid helping each other because of selfishness, or they do not want to get themselves into unfortunate misunderstandings. This mindset of them will slowly affect Singapore's friendly image, and we should continue to retain the kampong spirit by helping each other in need.
And for my reflection summary, the new perspectives that I had gained from visiting the heritage site is firstly, I realized that schools do not teach nor emphasize about the war memorials, like the cenotaph, and are too focused on the main characters of world wars. Secondly, the foundation that was laid by the fallen soldiers had prospered into what Singapore is of today. And before learning these facts about the cenotaph and the influence of the missing war soldiers had on what Singapore has built on, I never gave it a second thought to think that the structure was a war memorial for war soldiers who had no body for burial. But now, I had gained a new appreciation to how Singapore had honored the past. In this case, building a memorial has a gravestone for all of the missing soldiers. And lastly, the important values that I can take away from this trip is the undying loyalty of the soldiers whom would know that they had a high chance of dying while in action, and the dignity of Singapore's decision to build a war memorial show how important the World War soldiers' actions were, instead of putting it aside and eventually forgetting about it.
So, the new perspective I had gained from this journey is that Singaporeans should not take our fight against communism for granted and instead use it as a reminder for how far we as a country have come. Overall, it had become a huge part of who we are as Singapore is today. Before this, my view on the topic was that never really had much appreciation to what our previous generation had done for our society. But now, I have a better understanding about what our older generation have done for us and will always have appreciation towards what they have done for us. The value that I can take from this is the loyalty of the past Singaporeans had for Singapore while facing Communist Party of Malaya. So here is our bibliography.